Well, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, jointly hosted by the Social Finance and Environmental Program Evaluation Topical Interest Groups of the American Evaluation Association. My name is Ichiro Toda with the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank Group, and I'm also serving as the webinar co-chair of the Social Finance Topical Interest Group. For those of you that are not familiar, the American Evaluation Association is a professional association of evaluators. And the Social Finance Thematic Interest Group is a group of AEA members who are interested in the sole topic of social impact measurement and management and exploring the interplay between the social and financial return of investment. We are always welcoming new members. I will put the link of our TIC as well as the link for all the webinars that have been recorded, including in the future, this webinar will be recorded as well. Then I will put the link of the website in the chat as well. Now, please let me give the floor to Evan and Veronica, who are the co-chairs of Environmental Program Evaluation TIC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ichiro. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Worthington, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Environmental Evaluation Program Evaluation TIG. I'm joined by my co-chair, Evan Burris, as well as the program co-chair, Rupu Gupta, today. So just a little bit of background information. The Environmental Program Evaluation Interest Group, or the EPE TIG, brings together AEA members with a shared passion for environmental issues across a wide range of sectors, including education, energy, conservation, sustainability, global environmental challenges, and others. This type of work is diverse, and our members have a very wide range of expertise, from conservation biology and ecology, things like environmental policy, natural resource management, social sciences, economics, and beyond. So whether you're new to the field of environmental evaluation or a seasoned contributor, being a part of our TIC just means that you're committed to deepening your understanding of this vital area of work. Today, we have a very exciting webinar focused on climate measurement and impact investing towards a common approach. So now, without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce today's speakers. We're very lucky to have with us Sasha Zueva, the Director of Strategic Learning and Impact at the Rockefeller Foundation, where she works closely with program teams, grantees, and learning partners to measure, evaluate, and continuously improve our impact. She has over 15 years of experience in monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and substantially less experience in impact measurement and management, as her work on measuring the impact of impact investing just started when she worked at the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. There, she worked both on the core business and social impact sides and received immeasurable levels of support through the social finance TIG when she was just starting out. It is truly a community that she values, and inspired by her experience with that TIG, she also joined Climate Smile, which is a community of practice that we'll hear about more in just a moment. We also have with us Marta Aranz. She's the director of Climate Smile Community of Practice. And Marta works as an independent consultant, partnering with social sector organizations, collaborative initiatives, philanthropic organizations. She's also a part-time director of the Climate Smile Community of Practice, and her practice is at the intersection of facilitation, strategy, learning, and evaluation, with an interest in systems thinking and transformation. Before working as a consultant, Marta served in leadership roles related to monitoring, evaluation, and learning functions in organizations such as Oak Foundation, the Oxfam GB, and Save the Children International. She truly enjoys collaborative work and believes in the power of collective impact to advance our thinking and practice. We also have with us Jordan Mitra, who is the manager of impact accountability at Prime Coalition. He leads Prime's Climate Impact Advisory Services and is the lead author of the Playbook. He brings over 10 years of experience in impact-focused consulting across climate and biodiversity finance and philanthropy. Today, he will provide an update on the Playbook's progress and guide us through key topics for feedback and discussion. which will help refine the next version. So today's webinar is truly intended to be an interactive one. And so I now give the floor to all of our speakers so that they can explain the rules of engagement and go ahead and get the session started.
Excellent. Thanks, Veronica. Are we ready for me to share screen? Okay, perfect. Let's give this a go. All right, can everybody see the slide says Climate Finance IMM Playbook? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for our interactive webinar today. We really hope that you'll enjoy our session where we're going to walk through and also ask for your input on a new resource that we're building, the Climate Finance IMM Playbook. So this is something we've been working on for the last few months, drafting amongst ourselves and with a few external partners, but we've reached the point where it would be really helpful to get some feedback from leaders across the field, like yourselves, so we can make this playbook something that's really useful across the field. So overall, our main goal is to help drive more capital towards the best climate solutions, and we hope that this resource will break down some of the barriers out there to doing this. And we're really excited to have your feedback be a part of it. So we're trying something a little bit new today with lots of interactive polling and questions throughout. Don't worry, it will all be anonymous, though we do welcome coming off mic as well and asking questions anytime or just dropping a discussion in the chat. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Marta and Sasha to explain a bit about who Climate Smile is and why they commissioned this work.
Thank you, Jordan. So I'll take a couple of minutes just to introduce the Climate Smile community of practice. So to give a bit more background around sort of how this project came about, but also what is the community trying to achieve. So we are still a very, very young community of practice. We're not even 2 years old, but we've been quite active and growing really quickly thanks to the amount of energy and interest that we have received from members of the community. So SMILE, it's an acronym that stands for Strategy, Monitoring, Impact, Learning, and Evaluation. So in a way, we want to have to be an umbrella community that brings together not only the more traditional, let's say, male practitioners, but also those that work in impact more broadly, and also strategy. And we understand, like many evaluators, but we wanted to make that connection very explicit with sort of the strategy conversations, the impact conversations. We are growing quickly, although we want to maintain the human connection, the relational aspect of the community. So our ambition is not to grow and to be a 1,000 people community, but really curate the spaces. And we have around 50 philanthropic organizations right now joining. This community is mostly for SMILE staff working in philanthropic organizations that work in climate. So we get this question a lot. We do curate also a list of allies, partners, other, let's say, evaluators that work as consultants or that work with other networks, other network weavers, other philanthropic advisors. But in terms of most of the activities and the offer, it's mostly for staff working in philanthropy, and there are good reasons for that, but maybe I won't go into the details now. Maybe I'll just highlight a couple of things. The community is a learning community, it's a practice community, but it's also a collaborative space for members to do things together and to advance the thinking and the field together. This is an excellent example of how this is happening. And I love sort of the idea as well of Climate Smile not only being a community of practice for those that are actively joining the activities, but also becoming a platform that allows for different members in the field to exchange, to debate, to dialogue, and to move some pieces together. So you will see that this example, this project, for instance, it's a really good example of multidisciplinary teams going across fields and bringing together practitioners from across different fields of practice to understand each other, to learn from each other, and ultimately to be more effective in our climate work and better achieve our goals. I'm gonna pass it on to Sasha.
Thanks, Marta. And just want to say it's so amazing to see all the new and familiar faces here. and to get to talk about something as exciting as climate, the kind of the intersection and integration between climate and IMM. I feel like I've been waiting for this for years, so it's really nice that the two TIGs are able to collaborate. Really kind of great to have everyone's expertise. I don't want to take too much time to talk. I really want to make sure that we get your brilliant brains to kind of help us push forward something that we're calling the Climate Finance IMM Playbook, which is the whole subject of this webinar, and that Jordan will walk us through. But just a little bit of background, just I want to make sure that it's clear that this is a collaboration. So even the kind of the playbook, obviously we're taking this to a bigger audience right now, but even before this was a collaboration between many organizations, and especially it was a co-creation between Veronica Lazabal from the BHP Foundation, Joanna Cohen from Builders Vision, and now also Fernando Morales from Builders Vision, and with a lot of support from Marta and the Climate Smile team. So big thank you to everyone. We are all driving this idea as part of Workstream 4, which is a climate finance workstream of Climate Smile. It's a workstream that focused specifically on impact measurement and management and impact investing, or simply IMM. But because it's within Climate Smile, it's also focusing on climate. The genesis of the idea was actually a conversation between Veronica, Joanna, and myself about how we wish that there was an easier way to understand and to access the various climate measurement frameworks and tools so that we can integrate them into our own IMM frameworks. So kind of the idea for the playbook was born out of a desire to learn and to make things easier for ourselves. And then to make sure that the idea had relevance, we went out to a bigger group, a larger reference group, which was made up of Climate Smile members, but also non-Climate Smile IMM experts. Especially big shout out to Caitlin Rosser. I don't know if she's on, from Calvert Impact. She's been very involved, but also to all the other members of the reference group who are actually, some of whom are in this call, who've given their time to review the playbook and to get it to this draft. And they will, of course, be mentioned in the acknowledgements, as you will too, if you would like to. And of course, Jordan and Carrie, who are also on the call from Prime, have really been developing this playbook and pulling an enormous amount of information together and trying to put it into a format that is actually user-friendly and could help both IMM professionals and investors who are seeking guidance on climate measurement and seeking guidance that's actually right-sized and relevant to the impact investing space. This brings me kind of to a quick blurb on audience. One of my RF colleagues said that that some playbooks end up being a PDF to nowhere, and we definitely don't want that. We want to make sure that this PDF, this playbook, has an audience and that the audience does use it. So kind of as we're putting it together, we're thinking of IMM experts like you, impact investors as well, who would use this as a resource to lower barriers to entry into climate finance. And to potentially also kind of improve the integrity of impact within climate finance. We understand that a playbook as a tool cannot be the only thing that does this, but it is part of a tool, part of a set of tools that will hopefully help with that. So yeah, really thankful to all of you for trying to make it even better and more user-friendly at the same time more complete. So now over to Jordan.
Great. All right. So just quickly about Prime, and then we'll dive right into the content. So at Prime, our overall mission is to unlock catalytic capital and change the future of climate finance. And we tackle this through 3 different strategies. So first, shown on the left slide here, by aggregating and deploying catalytic capital directly into climate technologies. We do this through our 3 venture capital and project financing programs, Prime Impact Fund, Azola Ventures, and Trellis Climate, each of which targets a specific gap in the climate finance ecosystem. Our second strategy, shown in the middle, is focused on building the field through knowledge sharing, with the goal of making it easier to incorporate climate impact into decision making. So this includes Project Frame, our global community focused on enhancing impact investing practices, and our free and open access assessment tool, Crane, which investors and entrepreneurs can use to assess the impact potential of companies and technologies. Then lastly, Prime recently started offering technical consulting services to help folks with this work. We've seen over time that even though there are a lot of resources available, sometimes capacity is an issue and some folks just need an extra hand from a third party. So we do forward-looking assessments for investors, and we also do them through our Crane tool and also off tool. We also do work like this playbook, which falls under our insights and education buckets, all the way in the bottom right there. So if anybody feels like they could use some extra support implementing climate impacts into their practices or developing resources like this, we are here to help. Okay, so Sasha touched on this a bit, but I wanted to start by explaining what Climate Smile and Prime saw as a gap in the field and why we felt that this playbook needed to be created. So what we've experienced is that now in 2025, there are a lot of robust frameworks, tools, and methodologies that explain how to do impact measurement and management in the climate space. But sometimes they can feel really scattered and it's hard to know where to start or what applies to you. So even though there's been a lot of development in the climate impact investing space over the last 2 years, it hasn't always been cohesive, which can leave newcomers feeling overwhelmed at times, ultimately creating a barrier to IMM and climate finance. And because there isn't a single user-friendly how-to guide to onboard folks onto IMM specifically for climate finance, we felt that one needed to be made, basically. So the last thing that we want is for investors who are willing to do this work not engage because it's too overwhelming. So by making this playbook, we're hoping that this ties things together nicely to make things as simple as it can be. Like I mentioned earlier, this playbook is still currently under construction. We've gone through a few drafts with feedback from Climate Smile and Prime, one external reference group, but we felt that it was time to open it up to a broader audience. The goal of this first iteration of the playbook is to make it as user-friendly and accessible as possible. And ultimately, it's folks like you and your colleagues who we're hoping to make this for. And we want to make sure that we bring you into the process. So far, we've learned a lot. For example, that there are many areas that we could potentially focus on. Full transparency, the playbook is already way too long, and we're looking for ways to simplify. And we've also seen that sometimes there isn't one clear answer to some of these more thorny questions, since a lot of this content hasn't yet been decided on by the field, but it's still not an excuse for not having action right now. So we're excited to get your thoughts today and to check in with you and make sure that we're on the right track, basically. All right, our goals for today, I'll give a high-level overview of what's in the playbook and then get your feedback on some of the areas that we found could use some more input. We're also looking forward to learning about what subjects are the most important to you so we can make sure that they're included. And then lastly, we hope that you'll be excited about all of this. We'd love for you to be champions of this work as we move it forward and to get the word out for everyone. So to make all this happen and to have a really good session today, we are going to need your input. So we've encouraged lots of participation. We have some polling and other areas for your thoughts throughout, and Q&A is welcomed at any time. Okay, so let's give this a go. I'm bringing up our first question of the day. To do this, you'll need to go to slido.com, either on your phone or your computer, and then enter the code shown there in the bottom left. You can also scan the QR code. It looks like there's a space between the 1 and the 0, but I checked and there is not. So feel free to just enter all those numbers in and it should work. Okay, so our first question, I'll give you a second to go in there and hopefully it all works well. But our first question is open-ended. What topic related to IMM and climate finance are you most excited to learn about, either for today or later on in this playbook or in a future iteration? I'll give you all a few minutes to log in and answer, and hopefully it populates and we get a couple of thoughts. We go, science-based targets. Also just say that all these questions are really for information that'll be really helpful for us as we work on the playbook. So we do please encourage you to follow along and give us answers if it's possible. All right, excellent. Seeing lots of folks typing, lots of responses. Resilience, green hushing, excellent. Equitable solutions, climate resilience and adaptation, love it. And forward and backward looking measures. Yes, we love talking about those at Prime. I'll give just another minute or two for folks to add in their answers. I'll also say that all these will be stored for us afterwards, so we'll go back and we'll be able to use these as we work on the playbook. Equitable solutions, excellent. All right, just one more minute for these last couple participants to have their answers. Biodiversity, that's covered in the playbook. Making this easier. Love it. That's exactly what we're hoping to do. Okay, perfect. Really, really helpful. Hopefully that was a pretty simple process. You can just keep that page open and it will automatically update with any new questions as we go along. So yeah, really helpful to get a sense of where folks are coming to from this. And I think we tackle a good number of these topics, not all of them, but this was really useful for us to know what folks are interested in. Okay, so next I'll give a quick overview of what is in the playbook so far. It all falls under 4 main sections. So first, key IMM concepts that are relevant to climate finance. This includes some topics that I'll go over in a minute, like impact versus ESG, and what exactly are climate impacts. Next, the investment lifecycle and how to integrate climate-specific IMM across investment lifecycle stages. And then we've done a lot of research on the climate frameworks and tools for each impact objective. So mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity, putting them all in one easy place so that they're pretty easy to find and review. And then lastly, a few other things to consider, some worksheets to help get you started, regulatory compliance, and things like that. So this is the current status of the playbook. Okay, so there's no poll or question on this one, but I just wanted to add for context that the playbook makes a clear distinction between impact and ESG, with the playbook focusing specifically on impact. Often the two get lumped together because they both have to do with environment and investing, but they're actually very different in focus and intent. There's a full breakdown of this in the playbook, but just to summarize very quickly at a high level, the key difference basically is that ESG is a framework for how a company's practices and operations affect its own value and mitigate risk, whereas impact is focused on how a company affects the world, basically, whether it helps to solve certain system problems or not, like climate change. Lots more on this in the playbook, but I just want to make it clear that this is what we're focusing on before moving forward. Okay, so our first big area of debate that we would love your feedback on. The first question that we face is pretty simple, actually. Just what is climate investing? What impact objectives fall under the big climate umbrella that a climate-focused impact investor should know about? And the way that we ended up breaking this out is by separating between core climate impact objectives, which are shown on the screen here, and additional environmental objectives, which I'll get into on the next slide. But we did this because at its core, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns, mostly caused by greenhouse gas emissions. And you're probably familiar with the 2 main climate impact buckets, mitigation and adaptation, which aligns with how the UN defines all this. You'll also see that we've broken out mitigation into 2 distinct categories, decarbonization and innovation, which might come as a surprise to some, but we think that there is an important distinction here for impact investing. Essentially, that decarbonization is focused on reducing emissions from existing industries, which require backward-looking assessments and metrics, whereas innovation is on creating new solutions that will displace higher emitting industries, which needs forward-looking metrics and assessments. So in the playbook, we've broken these out as the core climate impacts for investors to consider, also giving examples of indicators and solutions for each of them. And I just put a couple of here on the slide, but we have a lot more in the playbook for different indicators and examples. But even though mitigation and adaptation are the core of climate impact investing, there are other environmental goals that can seriously contribute to climate outcomes that have a lot of overlap. So nature and biodiversity, water and marine resources, circular economy, pollution, the last of which includes things like plastics and other air and water pollutants. Each of these can be viewed as its own distinct environmental goal, even without climate change as a factor. For example, many people prioritize saving species from extinction simply for the fact of saving that species for biodiversity, not to stop the Earth from warming. Or getting microplastics out of food, although overlaps with climate, could be viewed primarily from a pollution and a public health lens, for example. So there's a big universe of environmental impacts, but they all generally fall under one of these main buckets, or mitigation and adaptation. But we landed on these categories specifically because they align with the EU taxonomy, which for some will be really important for reporting, and because of the breadth that allows different solutions to fall under. There's a lot that can be said here, but the key point is that these strategies are not mutually exclusive, and solutions might fall under multiple categories. So for example, someone focused on agriculture, they could arguably fall under mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity, water, pollution, basically all of these except for maybe circularity, although there probably is a case for that too. So it's not shown here, but in the playbook, we also give examples of how these overlap with mitigation and adaptation in addition to the indicators and examples. The last point that I'll make on this is that we're not suggesting that all of these need to be assessed for every investment. Rather, these are the categories that you might want to consider. So that brings us to our next poll, which is an open-ended one. So you can just type in your response. Do you think that this organization of impact objectives is appropriate for a 101 level intro to IMM for climate finance? I'm curious if it's too complicated, too simple, if you think it should be organized differently. And then for extra credit, feel free to let us know what you would like to see included here if it were more geared towards a 201 or a 301 level audience. This one's not a word cloud that'll show immediately, so I'll just give you a minute or two to type and then click and it'll show some of the answers. We have 8 responses so far. I'm going to start showing the answers, and I think if you're still entering, if you're still typing, they'll still pop up. So yes, seems appropriate to get started. Yes, seems simple enough. Not sure yet. Not sure, need more information. Totally fair. Case studies for 20131. Excellent. We have included a couple of case studies in the playbook that we link to. So glad to know that will be helpful. Yes, more demarcation of forward and backward looking impact. That is a perfect transition to our next section. I'll give a second for a couple more thoughts. Edge case examples, yes. Great. Okay, well, overall, I'm pretty happy to see that this, for the most part, sits well with everybody. And some of you are just looking forward to more detail, which I completely understand. Scope 4, okay. All right, perfect, thanks. Really, really useful. And like I said, we'll hold on to all this feedback and review it all in detail afterwards. Okay, so next, building on this, we've also included some guidance in the playbook on how to integrate multiple impacts. So basically looking at how one investment in one area could also affect another. For example, you could build all the solar in the world, but you could cut down the rainforest in the process, and you might be harming biodiversity more than you're actually helping the climate. But this is an area where there isn't currently a lot of guidance, but we did find a few resources that we've highlighted here. UNEP Finance Initiative has a few on holistic impact analysis and impact mappings, and Systems Change Lab also has some good resources. There are also a few private for-profit companies out there that offer integrated impact scoring, but here we're focusing just on information and tools that are publicly available. But because this section right now in the playbook is on the lighter side, we figured that we would try to do some crowdsourcing. So next one, we're curious if any of you would suggest other resources or best practices that you might be aware of on integrating multiple impacts specifically for impact investing. It's okay if the answer is no, but we figured with a group like this, it'd be great to test it out and see if there's anything else that we're missing out there. Don't know of anything quantitative. Okay. And only 3 participants typing. That's a lot less than the last slide. So immediate reaction is potentially affirming that this is a gap in the space that needs more research, which is really useful for us to know, and we can point that out specifically. Gaps or trade-offs, negative impacts. RS Plus themes do a decent job. Okay. All right. Very, very helpful. I'll keep us moving along here. Okay, so another area we explore in the playbook in detail, which I mentioned a bit about earlier, is the difference between backward and forward-looking assessments. So there are a lot of different terms and types of assessments to be aware of, which we've simplified on this table here, although it's still a very dense slide, so thanks for sticking with us. So these range from backward-looking or for footprinting on the left, which includes scope 1 through 3 realized greenhouse gas report footprinting, and scope 1 through 3 reductions, which is meant to prepare a greenhouse gas inventory that represents a real accounts of a company's emissions. We also have avoided emissions on the right, which represent emissions reductions that would not occur if the project or service in question did not exist. And these include realized avoided emissions and forward-looking impact assessments like planned or potential impact as well. So even for us at Prime, even though we work with this all the time, we find the distinctions to be a bit confusing at times. This is an area where the field is yet to fully unblur the lines between some of these categories. So we've included the latest guidance here with descriptions, the purpose of each, weaknesses, and related methodologies. So on one hand, we think that this is both really technical and potentially overwhelming information for a one-on-one audience, but it's also really important in its distinctions and the applications. People really need some guidance on which part applies most to their kind of work. So our question for this group, is this the right level of information for an introductory audience? What info do you think is most appropriate for us to include when it comes to backward versus forward-looking assessments?
Could you go back to your previous slide?
Yes, absolutely. And the poll should still work.
My poll stopped working, but I'm not sure about others.
Let's see.
And now it's back.
Okay, good to
Sorry
know.
about that.
Can't go backwards. Yes, examples will be critical. Yep, absolutely. When or why to use each, same idea. Okay, including tools and frameworks underneath, more about examples. We'll give just another minute or two. Worry that it pigeonholes us too much in thinking only about greenhouse gases. Yes, that's a great point. So we'll get into, we do include guidance on the frameworks and tools beyond greenhouse gases as well in the playbook, but that is a really good point that being overly focused on GHGs might discourage folks from leaning into some of the other impacts as well. And decision tree of how to approach. That's a great idea. Okay. Yep. And I should also note that the actual table in the playbook is gigantic and it takes up a whole page from corner to corner. So there is a lot more information that we have on that. So good to know that we're on the right track with this basically. And the main point I'm taking away is that more examples of when to choose which one would be really helpful for folks. Okay, so one more key decision that we made was that in order to make the playbook practical and user-friendly, we designed it to follow the investment life cycle. Theory being that ultimately impact measurement and management needs to follow the investments and the investment team needs to be able to use all this information. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we leaned into the 9 impact principles from OPIM. And in the playbook, we've included this graphic directly and then walk through each principle one by one, describing what IMM activities fall under each one. And we also give examples of how we've applied them at Prime in our own catalytic venture capital program. So giving a climate specific example just from what we know in our work. So this is also an area where we've gotten some feedback during review that some folks don't think it's really essential. Some folks absolutely do and really, really want this information. And it seems quite different based on where you're coming to this from. So also, arguably, not all of these principles have climate-specific distinctions, especially the last two, numbers 9 and 8, maybe 7. So question for you on the investment life cycle, although I'll leave this up just for 1 second to let folks digest the table in case we can't go back. Our question on this is basically because not all stages are inherently climate specific, we're on the fence about what to do with it. So would it be helpful to include all stages or only a subset of the stages, basically? Or potentially to skip this content altogether if you don't think it's terribly relevant to your work? Okay, include all the stages. Okay, finally, a different opinion, great. Okay, perfect. That seems to be a resounding consensus amongst this group. That is excellent, exactly what we were coming here today for. So really, really helpful to get that feedback. Okay, next, arguably the real meat of the playbook. We've listed the frameworks and tools for each impact objective. And we did a broad landscape review of the frameworks and tools for each area. So adaptation, biodiversity, circular, et cetera. And we included them along with descriptions, their target audience, which impact principle they most clearly align with. So I just gave a screenshot on the right, but basically imagine that replicated for about 10 more pages across all of the different impact areas with many, many more frameworks and also tools. Basically, what we found is that these quickly have gotten very long for some areas, especially in the decarbonization space. So even though it's closer, we really want to have a one-stop shop. It's still in practice, there's a lot of information to wade through, even when we do the put things all in one place. So one alternate idea that we've considered is that rather than providing all of the leading frameworks and tools, to offer just a selection of recommended ones for each stage of the investment lifecycle. So picking the ones that have come most recommended from investors and thought leaders in our community. So we would love your feedback on which approach between these two bullet points on the left it would be more helpful for you, for an intro audience as well. Basically, should we include everything and let you wade through them, or should we include just a subset of recommended frameworks and tools?
Does anyone have any questions on the difference, or is it pretty clear?
I'll just ask my question out loud. I'm not a primary intended user of this playbook, but I'm a 101 audience that could imagine myself wanting to learn about, like, to get a crash course in this content so that my work as an evaluator could be more relevant to those doing climate investing. And so I'm unsure whether to kind of give feedback thinking about people like me that might want a crash course and to really get oriented quickly and well versus like what I imagine most users of this guide will need or use.
Mm.
Like for me, I'll want more landscape, but if you're already doing this work or want to do more climate focused work, then you could skip. So I have a hard time holding both of those users in my mind.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that. Sasha, let me know if you have a different opinion. Evan, I would encourage you to think about this from your own perspective, and to really answer from what you think would be most helpful for you. But Sasha, let me know if you think that a different approach might be better for folks to orient around.
I think Veronica has a view.
Yeah,
I
Veronica,
do
do you
have
want to come off mic? There you go.
Evan, thank you so much. And so when we were thinking about the playbook, we were thinking about making something that was very practical, that could be like lifted and picked up and used immediately. And so I do think your perspectives would be helpful. However, if you are interested in more exploring the IMM space specifically, I think the social finance TIG is a really great place to join. There are a bunch of impact measurement and management primers out there. And what we were trying to do was differentiate from those pieces as well, because we didn't want to duplicate. And so I just wanted to provide you that context in case it's useful. And obviously you would be more expert on the climate and environment space, more so than some of us. And so I'm sure that there could be some IMM resources from your perspective. And if there are, they would be great for you to share those also, because I do think that there's different ways that people can contribute.
So maybe we should view this guide as a layer on top of maybe some baseline IMM knowledge and understandings. Okay, that's helpful.
Perfect. Thanks, Evan, for coming off mic. I'm encourage anybody with questions to do that anytime. And thank you, Veronica. Okay, excellent. Looking at the answers now, both in the majority, not surprising, although a lot of folks just want to cut right to the frameworks and tools that are recommended. Also really, really helpful for us to know. And yeah, less folks just want the full kitchen sink on the comprehensive landscape. Okay. So this is my last content slide before jumping into just a bit of a rapid fire of some questions to wrap things up. Before closing things out, I just wanted to point out that through this work, we've identified a handful of knowledge gaps that need some more attention moving forward. First, resources and frameworks found that they're generally lacking outside of mitigation, basically. So some areas like biodiversity, there's been a lot of work in that space for a very long time, but there's not a lot that's specific to impact investing. So we found that there's a big gap there on advancing frameworks in those areas and tools. Next, life cycle assessments versus consequential assessments, weighing the costs and benefits of each of those, when to do each one, when to progress to a life cycle assessment. Rebound effects and other unintended consequences, how to quantify those, and additionality and impact attribution as well, how to capture those in the climate space. So a lot of these topics most likely make sense for more of a fall one resource, a 201, 301 type playbook, but just wanted to point out that these are some areas that we noticed are broadly lacking across the field when we were doing our research. Okay, so that's it for the content that I'll walk through, but we do have a few more questions that we'd love your feedback on, so would love it if you'd stick with us as we work through these. So of the content that we discussed today, I'm curious, what subjects do you think are the most essential for a 101 level audience? Feel free to pick anything we talked about today. Specifically, like I said, the playbook is currently a bit too long to be pick it up and read it resource, like Veronica mentioned. So we're hoping to really home in on what is the most important content for you. Difference between mitigation, decarbonization, and mitigation innovation. Excellent. We do have a lot more information on that in the playbook, but good to know that we should really lean into that. different typologies and methodologies, more on comparison to ESG, more examples, what different metrics to use, purpose of different frameworks. All right, about 10 minutes left, and I do want to leave time for Q&A. So I think I'm going to give just one more second for these folks to hit send on their answers. We have, I think, 3 questions left that we'll try and get through. Yep, examples definitely seems to be a key theme throughout, which makes perfect sense. I'll give just one more minute for those last folks to wrap up. Okay, great. Okay, next one. So who do you think are the best networks for further testing and disseminating this work? Are there any events that we should make sure to attend to platform this work? So yeah, getting the word out for this will be really important. And we think that this group would have lots of ideas on where we could go next once we finalize this iteration of the playbook and starts to communicate it more publicly. Impact Frontiers present at AEA. Submissions due at the end of the month. We'll get on it. Impact Frontiers, Jin, already thinking about that one. That sounds great. MIE, GEO. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we have discussed a couple of these, so this is really useful to know what some of the best ones to focus on might be. And seems to be some general consensus over the handful of folks that we should really reach out to with this. Okay. Okay, next, just really curious about where you're coming from for this work and about whether you have a discretionary budget for doing any sort of IMM work, just for us to calibrate expectations basically on what we can recommend for folks. So yeah, do you have a discretionary budget for IMM? Yes, less than 10,000. Yes, between 10 and 100,000. More than 100K? No, or maybe it's just not applicable to you, where you're coming from. Not applicable. Okay. We have just one more second for folks to choose their response. Only a couple folks do, basically. Good to know. Okay, and then last one, I believe, actually, yes. So how much staff capacity do you have for IMM at your organization on this?
Jordan, you have a bias sample here. People who are attending an IMM call.
I think so. Yep. That's a great point, Jenny. Thanks. All right, and just move us along. Last one, I lied. We have one more for you, and then we'll just open it up. If you have to set up an IMM plan to assess, measure, evaluate a climate assessment investment, would this playbook be helpful, basically? Now that I've walked through everything, just a quick gut check on whether you think that we're on the right track, basically. Would it be helpful? If so, please tell us why. If not, we love constructive feedback. It'll help make us better, so please don't be shy. Would love to know your thoughts on why what we presented wouldn't be helpful as well. Yes, yes, don't know where to start. Yes, to continue to learn. Okay, excellent. So far, overall takeaway seems to be that we're generally on the right track, which was our first, objective. Really want to make sure that we're headed in the right direction here, which it sounds like we are. And thank you for your feedback. We'll look at all these in detail afterwards, but I want to move us forward since we're already close to the top of the hour, and open the floor for Q&A. Now that we've gone through everything, I will stop sharing my screen so we can see you all. And please, anyone, feel free just to come off mute and ask us any questions, and we're here to help. Also, Sasha or Marta, if there's any questions in the chat, feel free to uplift those as well.
No questions that I can see so far, but there's discussion about the dynamism of the playbook and how it will be used if people want to pick up that thread, or if you want to talk about more kind of detailed, the frameworks that are being used also would be helpful to get people's view on, are there any major gaps, especially from the kind of the EP tag, are there major gaps that you're seeing that are not being captured in this playbook?
Yeah, absolutely. Sasha, was the question about gaps beyond the slide that I highlighted already?
Yeah, sorry, it was my question if people just wanted to like qualitatively
Okay.
and verbally explain.
Maybe I can voice over where I sit. So I sit at an impact investing firm, an asset manager, and what would be super, super helpful for me, we've historically been pretty focused on the social impact side and are building out our climate approach. What happens for us is that we have a general understanding of what needs to happen. It's pretty easy in our space to make an argument for energy and water efficiency, since those are ESG aligned, like we're saving money for our investors, et cetera. It's harder to make an argument for really going above and beyond that. And so it's helpful, I think, to have this spell out the IMM approach, the slightly different way of thinking things. And because I think a lot of these frameworks get very, very like asset class and sector specific pretty quickly, I think it would be really helpful to have it set up, Sasha, to your decision tree comment, in a way that allows me to come in and answer just a couple of questions, or like flow through a couple of distinguishing factors. Like we focus on real estate, and so a lot of the stuff for other spaces just isn't relevant to us. So if I could answer just a couple of things quickly and then get to, okay, go to this, and next go to that, and next go to that. I think as if I was coming in 101, that would have been like mind-blowingly helpful. I would have been so excited.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay. This is Ichiro from Social Finance TIC. I think we are very close to the time to end the session. So if there's no any other comment. I just wonder whether there's any other questions or comments. If not, yes.
Can I get one in real quick? Maybe for me and other EPE folks, like I just don't think about this at all, and it's like really appreciates me understand some of the linkages from what I think about and how the same vocabulary and frameworks can be used for impact for IMM. And I'd be interested in connecting more of those dots. The way that I think about biodiversity or social resilience and the indicators and the measures that I use without thinking about finance at all can map onto this, which might make it easier for us to be able to contribute more professionally, but also so that across sectors we're using the same language. So I want to try to do that work backwards to see these as not so siloed. I don't know if that was useful, but wanted to say that out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely understand that, Evan. And that's basically what we're trying to do is there's so much out there, so many different areas, so many different applications in different areas. And hopefully this is a step in the right direction towards trying to sew those different pieces together for folks. I think it's still complicated no matter what, but I'm really trying to help folks focus in on which area that they can really prioritize is a big goal of ours.
One last quick thought, Evan, thanks for kind of voicing your thoughts on this collaboration and opportunity here today. The EP TIG is really trying to get a sense of our members' interests, work areas, sort of expertise. So we have a survey that we're doing to kind of get to where members' work is prioritized. So I think we have an opportunity to learn like what the interest is among members related to climate financing, climate investing. So we can start to identify that and plan for any future collaborative meetings like this as well. So so stay tuned essentially for future opportunities from us. Thank you.